there have been a couple of politicians recently who have been doing some absolutely excellent social media work. That includes over in the US, Zohran Mamdani, who has been running a mayoral campaign which has used social media and social media video in particular exceptionally well. Produced some absolutely fantastic content which is fun to watch, clear in its messaging, just absolutely wonderful. It also includes, on the absolute opposite end of the scale, Robert
do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier?
The present Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, Conservative politician in the UK, who is probably going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, and who, despite his politics on a pure formal level, has also been doing some really interesting social media work in terms of it being, again, well produced, native to the particular forms he's posting it on, clear in its messaging, etc. But why is this still so rare? Why are we still in such a place where politicians being able to do decent social media communication is such an oddity that someone like Generic making his videos about fare dodging, but this is still a rarity. And the thing we have to start with is an example of some terrible social media communication. And this launched today, and that is the DNC's Daily Blueprint. I was actually planning on doing this segment already about why some politicians are good at social media, why most aren't. And as I was doing my prep, saw a tweet, I think, or a post, some kind of advert for the US Democratic Party's new attempt to take on digital communication, which is a show called The Daily Blueprint.
Hi, I'm Hannah, the Deputy Communications Director for the Democrats. We're launching a new daily messaging program called The Blueprint. It starts today on YouTube. You should watch. We're going to talk about what's happening in Washington today, what Republicans are up to, what Democrats are doing, and how you can join the fight. See you there.
So this is the Democrats' new plan for kind of taking on the digital space. They're doing a daily live stream, which is all of
Monday, June 9th, 2025.
16
and welcome
minutes
to our
long
first episode of The
per
Blueprint.
day.
I'm Hannah Moldavan, Deputy Communications Director for
This
the
was
Democrats, and
streamed
your host.
6 hours ago, and currently has 4,420 views. The post I saw which drew my attention to this had a screenshot taken from when this was live that showed 130 people watching. The show seems to consist of Hannah Moldavan here, the Deputy Communications Director of the Democratic Party, sort of talking about what Trump's been up to and how you can fight back.
Today, you might be asking, what is the blueprint? Donald Trump is counting on us to get distracted, but we're not falling for it. Every morning, we'll cut through the noise and give you the real story. What's happening today that actually matters, why it's a big deal, and how you can fight back and help Democrats win. Whether you're in the trenches of Democratic politics or just want the truth, this is your go-to spot.
And all of this obviously comes off the back of the massive role that digital media, new media, and in particular podcasts were perceived to have played in the election of Donald Trump. To what extent they were the critical, crucial part of that campaign is, maybe we sometimes overweight for certain things, and we maybe overweight for things that are novel rather than things which are always factors, just like how is the economy doing, how do people feel the economy is doing, etc., etc., etc. Some of you will remember that
nobody deserves this more than him, and nobody deserves this more than his family.
At the celebration of Donald Trump's election back in November, Dana White of the UFC got up on the stage and thanked a stream of podcasters.
Family does. This is what happens when the machine comes after you. What you've seen over the last several years, this is what it looks like. Couldn't stop him. He keeps going forward. He doesn't quit. He's the most resilient, hard-working man I've ever met in my life.
I have to say, I'm unsure who this is, but she looks like she's doing her curtain call at the end of like a Broadway show or something. And like everyone else is doing their bows and she's doing the like. Just like, what am I having for dinner tonight? I'm done now. The show's over.
His family are incredible people. This is karma, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves this. They deserve it as a family. I want to thank some people real quick. I want to thank the Nelp boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bussin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
I will say, terrible job by The Independent there. By the fact you finished watching the video, by the fact you get to the bit of the video you're there to watch, The Independent logo is up, and also all of the YouTube end card. But this has sort of planted like a big question which has been going on for a long, long time in terms, ever since, you know, who is the left's Joe Rogan? Can the Democrats find a Joe Rogan, etc.? Kind of Joe Rogan being seen as this sort of like kingmaker, as Ziad saying in the chat. If you know, if the right has a Joe Rogan, who could the left have, right? Which is always a kind of interesting conversation. One of there was a similar conversation a little while back about Andrew Tate, right? And in a lot of the sort of conversation around sort of Andrew Tate as like a bad role model for boys and young men, like who could an alternative role model be that could pop up to I don't know, tease them away or whatever. And I read a really interesting interview with Tommy in it, who is a YouTube, a sort of Minecraft YouTuber, or used to be at the very least, Tom Simons. And I've met Tom only once, but was really nice and seems to have quite a decent head on his shoulders. Which I guess is me being patronizing because he's a bit younger than me. But like, I don't know, I've met him briefly and he was really nice. And I don't know, seemed very sensible. I know he's been doing a lot of stand-up comedy, and he's done this whole thing where he's done a lot of like just appearing on random bills and touring as Tom Simons rather than Tommy in it, so that he can kind of get. I think like his thing was that he didn't want to just have audiences that were going to laugh at everything. Like he genuinely wanted to try and be good at stand-up comedy, and therefore wanted to have the experience of performing in front of people who might not know who he is. And that was like, I don't know, that was interesting and good. And I don't know, to my mind, there are a lot of people in the kind of online media world where they're not so worried about like being good at the thing as being like a goal in and of itself. So that was good. But anyway, and one thing he sort of mentions in this chat, in this interview somewhere, is the idea that we sometimes talk about Andrew Tate as though boys and young men are like going out and finding Andrew Tate because they want to find Andrew Tate. And he's like, that's not happening. Like, actually, all of these algorithms exist and they are like feeding it to boys and young men, right? It's not, and like, there's a conversation to be had about, okay, why is this stuff attractive to them, right? Why are they drawn in by it rather than just pushing it away? But he makes a really good point of, like, you know, people aren't young men aren't seeking this stuff out. It is getting thrown at them by an algorithm which kind of values controversy and extremity and all of this kind of stuff, and like gut emotional responses, sort of like libidinal responses to things. And I think to some extent there's a similar phenomenon with your Joe Rogans or your whoever else it is in that massive list of podcasters, that there is a similar phenomenon of going, I mean, to what extent are people seeking out your Joe Rogans and your other people, and to what extent are you just being presented with them in a feed? Also, to what extent do people co-sign all of the opinions of the people they listen to? There's always really interesting polling. So in any polling after an election's happened, it's always really interesting to look at what's called like the crosstabs, where you kind of see how people who have answered one question to one thing have answered another question. And one of the things that's always interesting to compare is like how people who read certain newspapers voted. And what you'll find is that like there will be a sizable proportion of people who buy and read The Sun every day, who nevertheless will go out and vote for Keir Starmer or vote for Jeremy Corbyn before that, or like whoever the sort of Labour Party leader is, despite the fact that the Sun newspaper gloves off Farage ready to defy Labour's net zero orders and open new coal mines in Wales. Like the Sun newspaper basically absolutely hates the Labour Party and will say horrible things about it all the time, right? And yet there will be like a not insignificant number of people who will read that every day of the year and then be like, oh no, I like Keir Starmer or whatever. I'm voting Labour. And that's because people, you know, don't absorb all of the things, and they don't, or people are just able to go, do you know what? I like The Sun, but I can kind of tune that out. I mean, you know, I say this, I subscribe to The Guardian Weekly, which is like a kind of weekly version of The Guardian with like a bunch of articles from that week's reporting. And effectively, I read the news bits, and then I get to the opinion section, and I just because it's just not very good. Same with the Financial Times. I get a thing called the FT Edit, which is like you get 5 articles a day that are like curated for you, and I generally like the analysis, generally like some of the news stuff. Every time there's an opinion article, most of, or if not all of the Financial Times' opinion writers are like useless. They are like the most airheaded writers you can imagine. It's not even like interesting, because it's not even like particularly provocative, and so I usually just don't read that. And so I think there's some misunderstanding about exactly what like the world or anyone is looking for in terms of a left-wing Joe Rogan or whatever, or even what anyone's looking for when they're trying to find a media figure for their that is able to kind of support their politics. And my suggestion would be that the Blueprint is absolutely the opposite of anything that anyone thinks is what anyone might be looking for. I mean, one of the things that is enticing, I guess, or one of the things that allows Joe Rogan to shape listeners' viewpoints to whatever extent that he does or doesn't do that, is the fact that he isn't a part of the Republican machinery, right? To what extent he actually is like a centrist or whatever, I'm sure he still claims to just be a guy, being a guy who loves common sense and just doing my own research and working things out for myself, or however he would phrase it. Like, he is very clearly, at least under Trump, he is very clearly a Republican. And he is coming to any topic with that as a prior. But he is very much not a part of the party machinery. And so to even be thinking about responding to that with, here is our daily live stream. It's going to be 15 minutes long because we do not understand the form of a live stream at all. And not only is it going to be produced in-house by the Democratic Party, it's going to be presented by the Deputy Communications Director of the party. Like, who is this for? Like, who? Because you've got to... Like, you're only watching this if you're 100% on board already. I mean, and the Labour Party in the UK have been similarly just, like, trying to do social media stuff and doing terribly at it. Keir Starmer's social media stuff tends to involve... So they love a shot of him from behind and walking into or out of a place. Like, this is most of the Keir Starmer's social media strategy is, wow, imagine if he was walking into and or out of a place and we like followed him. And he does all these like just really like short snippets of him doing like visits of places.
I want to set out 3 fundamental changes that we're going to deliver. First, we are moving to warfighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces.
Just say, is warfighting a thing that people say? That sounds, I don't know. That sounds like what a 7-year-old would think a politician might say.
When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength. Second, everything we do...
Oh, don't... Peace through strength is very... a little bit 1984.
...will add to the strength of NATO. As we step up to take greater responsibility...
Oh God, it's boring. It's boring, right? It's just so boring. And he has all of the benefits of being the actual Prime Minister, right? He's able to film on a aircraft carrier. He's in like a big place here. All of these possibilities of like cool shit you could be filming and doing. And they managed to produce the most boring social media content you could imagine. It comes across as like state broadcast.
Same with the asylum backlog. Or teachers helping them personalise the lessons for their pupils. In every case, we can show AI innovation making a difference for working people. We should be able to look every parent in the eye in every region in Britain.
Like, it's just... You have all of the advantages of being the Prime Minister. You can film whatever you want. You can do... And it's the most impersonal stuff you can imagine. Like, this is... Like, all of this is behind webcameron, right? So, this was back in, like, the 2010? Before that, maybe? So, there was a... When I exactly did, but so, like, David Cameron, Prime Minister from 2010 to 2016... 2017, he like made headlines at the time for doing a series called Webcameron, where he, here we go, 2006 he started this, where basically he'd do a vlog, was effectively the
Well, I'm here in
pitch
Washington, I'm here in Berlin, but I'm here in Beijing, I'm here at Chimney Meadows. On your head.
Oh my God, have we just cracked where Tom Scott got his thing from? Before there was Tom Scott, there was David Cameron.
Well, I'm here in Washington, I'm here in Berlin, but I'm here in Beijing, I'm here at Chimney Meadows. On your head. David Cameron is somewhat a pain in the ass.
Like, and the whole thing was that it was like a kind of insight into his life as a politician, and the whole thing was that it was like genuine, that you got a sense of what his beliefs were, but you also got to like see him doing his stuff, and it broke down the kind of barrier between like politicians voting in parliament and doing all the important stuff they do, and like your life, and you got to feel like they were real people, right? And it's really interesting because there is a whole history of politicians doing social media first campaigns, and everyone being like, wow, this is really going to change things forever. Every politician is now going to campaign like this, and that's going to get them ahead. And broadly speaking, it does work very well, right? You know, David Cameron became Prime Minister. Donald Trump became President of the United States. Barack Obama, right, with his very Facebook and Twitter oriented campaigns, right? That's not everything that was, but like social media was like such a massive part of Obama's campaigns. Like every time this happens, everyone goes, yeah, this is going to be the future. And then somehow we wind up back at the worst stuff you've ever seen. Whether it's the blueprint, or whether it's Keir Starmer walking into and out of places. What's this one? You're walking around. Like, what even is this? No one says anything. No one says anything. What? He's just hanging around. Sorry, what? Is there something in the other ear that I can't hear? Is the audio done something funny? Sorry, like, he's just like hanging around. What? Just, I'm investing in the future of Britain. And then what? Did they just forget to put like the audio track on? Like a... Wow. It's just... And... Sorry, that's really stuck me. However, and like the people who end up like cutting through are the people who are doing really interesting stuff. So one of the challenges to Keir Starmer at the moment is going to be the fact that in Robert Jenrick, the Conservative Party do have someone who is pretty good at making decent stuff. So this is a sort of attack ad by the Conservative Party. We'll come on to Zohran in a moment, but this is like an attack ad on Keir Starmer by Robert Jenrick of the Conservative Party. And regardless of what you think about the content and the Conservatives more broadly, this is a really well-made video.
Why is it that Keir Starmer's Attorney General, Lord Hermer, represented all these clients? He says cab rank rule, and it's a vital legal principle. Gary, what's the cab rank rule?
It means the first cab of any rank must take the first customer.
Easy. And it's the same for many lawyers. Criminal barristers can represent people accused of horrific crimes because everyone knows they had to take the case. What's true for our criminal barristers just wasn't true for Lord Hermer.
Don't worry if you're like lost in the actual content of it. I'm in this for the form of it and its success as a piece of political communication.
He was a top human rights lawyer. He will have been inundated with cases, able to choose the pick of the bunch. And what's more, he often worked on a pro bono or no win, no fee basis. And the cab rank rule just doesn't apply to these cases. In other words, when Hermer's cab...
Like, it's slickly edited, it's to the point, it's as long as it needs to be, but no longer. 2 minutes, 11 seconds. It's snappy, it's slick, and also it manages to be a politician communicating to you, but he's communicating to you in a way that feels really genuine, right? And the other place we've seen this recently is in the US, where
there's a lot of
Zohran
things that make New York City
Mamdani
special. For me,
has been doing some really, similarly, just excellent political communication through online video. I will say that these videos don't get a huge amount of views on YouTube, neither does the Robert Jenrick ones, but like elsewhere on social media are just able to like...
there's a lot of things that make New York City special. For me, it's the delis and bodegas. Habibi, could I get an egg and cheese on a roll with jalapeno?
One Zohran special coming up.
Small businesses employ nearly half of all New Yorkers in the private sector. They keep the city running, but the last 4 years have been hard. We've seen the dollar slice go extinct, storefront after storefront close, and had a mayor in Eric Adams who has ignored the struggles of small businesses. That's why as mayor, I'm gonna make it faster, easier,
and all of his stuff is this slick. And it really goes to show that there is a way to do this stuff that, I kind of feel like this falls between the cracks of they're sort of trying to do a, what if we had Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan was a employee of the Democratic Party. Therefore kind of missing, like, you can't have like a presenter who is like a neutral presenter but is in the employ of the party. That feels weird. And then the Keir Starmer stuff goes too far the other way of being quite distant and being very like politician-y in a way that feels like it might have worked 20 years ago, but in a social media age just doesn't come across very well. And there's something about both this, and at the very least some of you will have seen so Robert Jenrick did a video where he confronted fare dodgers on the London Underground, and this one went like massive online.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? Do you want to go back and pay like everybody else? Do you think it's all right not to pay? Why don't you go back and pay? You can say off as much as you want. Oh no, but everyone else has to pay. You're carrying a knife, you say? Nearly 1 in 25 people using London's public transport aren't paying for it. So there's 8 officers down there, but 1 minute away, that gate's wide open. It's also just annoying watching so many people break the law and get away with it. Or at least most.
And it's really good. Like, I don't necessarily think this is the biggest issue in the world in comparison to so many other things. I would also say that fare dodging is downstream from stuff like tax dodging, right? The fact that, we can talk about the sort of breakdown of people feeling like they have to sort of comply with the rules or whatever, and a sort of growth in people just being like, oh, fuck it, I don't care. To my mind, that has been something which has started from the top. And yet, there is just a really successful mode of communication here. Some of that's really hard to hate because it is just so much a part of who these people are. Like Zohran, Robert Jenrick, whichever of those you love or hate, they're both able to look down the lens of a camera and talk to you like you're a person and say things with commitment, and you believe them, right? They come across as genuine, at least, in a way that, like, Keir Starmer, I would say, often struggles to. He often comes across as more calculated. If he's asked a question, he takes a while to think about what his answer is. He often just seems unsure. I think even when he is sure, he seems unsure in a way that just makes it hard to connect, right? And there's also the fact that all of this is, that they're in the places and all of this kind of stuff, and they're like interacting with the people and the stuff, and the little joke about the Zohran special is great. It's like he's not just here doing the visit. It's like, hey, I'm one of the gang. It's really interesting to me that this stuff hasn't become more widespread, right? And that there are still so many just terribly run social media campaigns for politicians, something like 20 years after webcameron first happened, that there are still politicians that don't get it. And I mean, in some regards, because this stuff does work when it works, right? Don't necessarily know whether win the primary or whether Cuomo will manage to hold on, but his campaign has made quite the climb. I don't know whether Robert Jenrick will be able to become leader of the Conservative Party and then form a government, or whether Reform have just got the momentum. But I'd sort of not been paying a huge amount of attention to Robert Jenrick after he didn't become leader of the Conservative Party in the last leadership election. A few of these videos, and I at least am paying attention now. He's got my eye on him, right? I'm not gonna vote for him, but I think it is depressing how much the question of whether a particular politician has a certain degree of just charisma and being charming or cool or whatever their particular angle is, we'd love to live in a world where that wasn't the case. I do think it probably matters quite a lot, no matter what your politics and what his politics, right?
Cheaper for small businesses to get started and stay open. First, we're going to cut fines and fees for small businesses
just quite
by
charming,
50%.
isn't he?
Regulations are important, but small businesses have to
And he's
navigate more than 6,000 of them with far fewer resources.
Like
To
this?
keep the city running. But the last 4 years,
Not everyone can get away with that, right? Keir Starmer couldn't get away with that. And I think one of the reasons political parties don't have to think about this more is because the political party as a sort of institution in our politics is a kind of outdated piece of ballast on the democratic system, which works in such a way that you don't need to get as many votes as you maybe otherwise would, right? Zohran faces a much bigger uphill battle because Cuomo has the, establishment of the Democratic Party behind him, right? Keir Starmer managed to win an election anyway because the way in which the political system in the UK is set up meant that he was able to get the right number of votes in the right number of places, that it didn't matter that fewer people voted for him than had voted for Jeremy Corbyn at a previous election, because he'd got the right votes in the right places. Vanishingly few of the candidates that ran in the election at which Keir Starmer became Prime Minister needed to win any kind of internal selection within their own local Labour parties, because the leadership of the Labour Party decided to just install candidates instead. And even when they don't, the systems are set up in such a way that being good chums with enough people within your local Labour Party and having the right qualifications or connections to get through a selection with the with the sort of party structures that can veto people to be candidates matters a lot more than being popular. There's no primary system in the UK where you can even kind of subvert the system. And so, one of the reasons that the Labour Party, that the Democratic Party, maybe I came off, are able to not have to be good at this stuff is because that they feel like having their hand on the kind of levers of the party systems means that they sort of don't need to, right? They can be that sort of ballast of and sort of keep more insurgent voices out. And yet we then reach times where that is a bit of a crisis, because suddenly when the Democrats have to talk to the general public, that becomes really difficult because they just don't know how to. Or Keir Starmer ends up facing off against someone like a Nigel Farage, who, again, love him or hate him, is quite good at doing a little bit of social media stuff and doing media stuff, and just generally is quite charismatic to people who find him charismatic. Or up against Degenerate, who, if he does become leader of the Conservative Party, I think is going to be very good at doing some very good social media stuff. I was having a chat with a friend in the pub the other day, and I was like, if I had less scruples, I could totally just be like, I could make all of your social media stuff better. I could just jump ship to the Labour Party and just be like, I could do it. I mean, reform has the benefit of not really relying on its own politicians to be the faces of the party, because they've managed to channel a sort of vague sense of disillusionment in such a way that doesn't matter so much. Thank you so much for watching this clip from one of my Monday night live shows. If you would like to watch more of these clips, both ad and sponsor free, and all of my videos from my main channel ad and sponsor free as well, alongside a bunch of exclusive stuff too, then you can do so over on Nebula. Perhaps you've already heard of Nebula. It's a premium streaming service that myself and a bunch of other creators, many of whom I'm sure you will know and love, have been building for a bunch of years now. Our goal has been to build a platform which we have some degree of control and ownership over, and therefore is a bit more accountable to us than third-party platforms like YouTube. Alongside allowing you to watch all of our videos ad and sponsor free and giving us a bunch more creative freedom, we are also building over on there a big catalogue of exclusive shows and films which wouldn't really work on YouTube but can really find a home among the premium setting of Nebula. That includes my debut feature-length film, Boomers, which I made last year, and which involved me travelling around Europe and the US to explore the lives and legacy of the baby boomer generation. It also includes my Nebula class, How to Research Like a PhD Student, in which I tell you all about all of the research skills and techniques that I use to find high quality and interesting sources to draw upon for all of my videos. If you want to get access to all of that super cool stuff, then I would love it if you would sign up to Nebula using my personal link, go.nebula.tv/Tom Nicholas. That gets you 40% off an annual plan to Nebula, which brings the price down to just $3 per month, which is super cheap for all of the stuff that you get. Using that link helps to support my work in a number of ways. We get a lot more per view when someone watches on Nebula in comparison to YouTube. We also get a little kickback from the amount that you pay to sign up. So you'll be supporting my work in a number of ways just by doing so. That link again is go.nebula.tv/Tom Nicholas. Thanks so much for watching once again, and I'll see you over on Nebula.